We need to talk. I don't make talky videos like this ever, but since I am a creator who plays DBD content and I make gaming content revolving around Dead by Daylight, I think this needs to be talked about. So Steam rolled out this new policy change in specific to family sharing or library sharing. Now, as a Dead by Daylight player, we all know the importance of downloadable content and how it poses for the game. DLC content in Dead by Daylight is not your average DLC content. DLC content in Dead by Daylight can go as far as changing the quality of the game. You don't have that DLC, you don't have those perks. This new Steam policy goes as follows. Who owns and can access the DLC and in-game content associated with a shared title? A guest will have access to the lender's DLC, but only if the guest doesn't also own the game. Guests may not purchase DLC for a base game they don't own. Any player may purchase, trade, earn, or otherwise acquire in-game content while playing a game, but in-game items cannot be shared between accounts. These items remain the property of the account that purchased or acquired them, whether borrowing or lending the base game. Now, at first glance, if you aren't exactly super into the gaming community, then this looks like a really good feature. It looks almost like a no-brainer that they'd have something like this. But this scratches the surface. This feels like a sugar-coated layer on top of what is actually happening. I have used Steam Family Sharing for about 2 or 3 years now, and it has been super beneficial. I share my library with my younger brother, and he shares his library with me. This means that we were able to play games together like Dead by Daylight, and we were able to share that DLC. And if I'd buy a DLC, then we could share it. If he'd buy one, then we could share it. It means that we'd both benefit from it, but we were still profiting the game. We were still purchasing the content. I often would buy my brother this DLC and gift it to his Steam account. He has a lot of DLC content that I don't own now. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter respond to this kind of sentiment being like, if you like the game so much, you should buy the DLC content on your own like everyone else does. But this isn't me not supporting the company. I am paying for this DLC, I'm just gifting it to my brother because there's an expectation that we'll be able to share that DLC. At the end of the day, it's under the guise of family sharing, it's kind of in the name. If it is an actual family situation and you are living in the same household and you're using family sharing, most families have 1 line or 2 lines of income. Buying a DLC twice for both of your children, or me paying for a DLC twice so that me and my brother could play it, is simply unreasonable to have that expectation. When you're in a family and you expect to share something through family sharing and you get that revoked, having this sentiment of, well, if you like the game so much, buy the DLC yourself, it's not reasonable. You should have an expectation that when you see the word family sharing, you'll be able to actually do as the title says. So to revoke DLC content in specific, bear in mind you can still keep the games, just not the DLC content. That feels very weird to me. At the end of the day, I highly doubt that a giant corporation like Valve is losing significant amounts of money due to family sharing, let alone DLC sharing, which really leads me to think that Steam is trying to go in a direction like Netflix or soon to be Disney with their password sharing. This was never an issue, and if it was, then why didn't they say anything out loud? Why has this been done quietly? Another huge issue I have is more specific to Dead by Daylight here. I know that a lot of people within the Dead by Daylight community who play on Steam would often use the family sharing function to be able to share DLCs. Might I also add that it's not like everybody who plays Dead by Daylight is playing it on Steam. There are Epic Games that you can play on consoles, so Switch, Xbox, PlayStation. So Steam is not the main contender in terms of Dead by Daylight. When people are sharing DLCs on Dead by Daylight on Steam, it's not exactly losing the company super mega amounts of money. When it comes to something like the Stranger Things DLC, that's where it becomes an issue. I bought the Stranger Things DLC about 1.5 years ago, maybe. I bought it through a third-party website because it's been removed from the Steam store. It was removed from the Steam store in November of 2021. It is no longer accessible. You cannot buy it on Steam, no matter what. It actually is now listed on third-party websites today for as high as £200. I bought it for $17.99 and that was still steep. So that gives you some context on how limited this DLC in specific is. When it comes to Dead by Daylight also, there are 3 different ways you can get things in game. Obviously you can buy DLC content which will give you characters, but then there's also content in game which you can only buy in game. So that would be legendary skins and cosmetics. That's your main kind of stuff. Legendary skins such as Maria from Silent Hill 2, which only was released about a day or 2 ago when I'm recording this, and like Claire Redfield for the Jill Valentine character. These are all skins that you cannot buy with in-game currency. They are using microtransactions such as Auric cells. Auric cells you have to buy through a certain set amount, and then you use those to buy things in-game. So that's real money being used. If you were using a DLC and you bought a cosmetic with Auric cells for this character that you owned via family sharing, not only are you losing the DLC now, you are also losing the cosmetic. We have no idea what is going on with that. On the topic of losing progress in Dead by Daylight, I had 1 survivor left to get, and I was planning to get her with the in-game currency called iridescent shards. When I woke up this morning, I had 23 survivors missing, 2 of which I can never purchase again because it's through the Stranger Things DLC, which obviously is no longer accessible, and I don't have £200 lying around to go and buy that DLC again. So that is 21 survivors. That's just survivors that I'm now missing. A lot of those were characters that I had mained for a long time, and I've been supporting this game for a very long time, but this feels like a real punch in the gut. I don't even want to think about how many killers I'm now missing. Steam has made this policy change so quietly and without any warning, and because of this there is a super outcry on Twitter trying to get attention of Steam or behavior to come out and talk about this, because this is a huge issue. A lot of people are losing a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of progress, and this is something that just cannot be overlooked. This is a policy change that nobody has asked for and nobody needs. It's a policy change that is only going to divide these communities further, and quite frankly it feels like an attack on gamers who are from a lower income household that can't afford to buy the DLCs back. Because family sharing is within the name. It was all to do with sharing to help people who cannot afford to buy these games or DLCs to share that content and enjoy it together. The expectation that someone should buy something twice if they want to own it is absolutely insane to me. If you want to do anything about this, I know that on Twitter at the moment there is a trending hashtag called Fix Family Sharing. I'm not sure if it'll do anything, but maybe if numbers become overwhelming, it will do something and Steam will talk about it, because this is insane. It's not fair on a lot of the people who have spent this time trying to acquire these DLCs, and especially not fair for people who are in actual families. Behavior, Steam, Valve, whatever, do something.